my mother and my grandmothers always wore a sweater and a skirt. Yeah.
You're carrying on that tradition.
Pardon?
You're carrying
Oh,
on
yes,
that tradition.
yes. My mother was a great beauty. Tom Wilson did her portrait. It's in the living room.
We'll
and
definitely look at that.
yes. And then he did me and my children. It's in a portrait. It's upstairs in one of the bedrooms. I see Tom a lot. He became a good friend, and this is a painting of his.
You have a number of his works here.
Loads. My walls are covered with Wilsons. It's the Madison Park Tom Wilson Shrine.
Is he living in this area?
Oh yes, he lives over on Belmont, and I see him. I talk to him every week. So, and I go to Whidbey, and he came with me recently up to Whidbey. When I moved to Seattle and left Bellevue, after a couple of years, I really was eager to have a place in the country again, and so I was lucky enough to be able to get an acre and a quarter up at Whidbey, and it has 2 cottages on it. One of them, it's on a 75-foot cliff, but a marvelous view, and a nice log house that manages to hold all my family for Thanksgiving, and so I go there every week if possible. Very lucky. When my mother lived to be 97. She was a remarkably beautiful and smart woman, and she loved going up there in her 90s with me, which was such a special thing to get to have. We played cards and sat around and poked the fire, and it was a very lucky thing for me. So that's good, and now my children go and my grandchildren go, and because leaving Bellevue was a big decision, and moving the press and the whole thing.
What made you come to Seattle instead of Bellevue?
Well, I foolishly thought it was too much to maintain. There was an old tennis court on the place and so on, but it wasn't. It was just time to do that, I guess. And there was room for the press in the garage, and so I did that, and I sold it before everything got really expensive, but it was okay. It was a beautiful property, looked right, it was just past the East Channel Bridge and looked down 10 miles down the lake to Renton. It looked, first you got to look at let's see, what's that called? Well, it was a swamp when I was a girl, and I used to take my dog in the canoe and go up the streams that came out at Newport. It wasn't Newport, what do they call that? New something. And who was it? Walter Isaacs. Then those old teachers of mine, Walter Isaacs and I forget the other one, moved up to Hilltop, and they thought I should sell my waterfront and move up to Hilltop, but I didn't do that. But my dad always sailed, and so we had sailboats, and so when I was recovering from polio, he decided that I would be the skipper of the sailboat, the big sailboat. And I'd always sailed from when I was little, so I did that. I did never hit any docks badly, but I had a husband and 3 children that could hold off, and it was lovely. It was a vote of confidence. so we sailed way up into Canada every summer when my kids were little.
And now in Whidbey, you have your view of the sea as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
the water's right there.
Which is kind of a return to that.
Yes,
That's a wonderful thing.
it is. I'm lucky. If I would cut the trees a little bit, I could see more water here, but I've seen it. The lake.
It's true, you are close by the water here too, so you're
Mhm.
never far away from water.
No, no, it's true.
And Duck Press. So
Oh.
tell me again how that name came to be.
Oh, Shirley and I were just laughing after we bought the press, and it was so. We were right on the lake. She was in our old summer house up above, and I was down as close as the garage to the water, and there were a lot of ducks. and also she was sort of I guess she'd become interested in cooking and starting the store, and so we thought of a duck press. We were all reading Julia Child in those days, and so on and so forth. So, pressed duck.
It's very funny,
Yeah, well, anyway.
Just turn it around.
I know. And I do have my great uncles were great hunters in the early days in Seattle, and I do have a lovely wooden duck out there, wood duck, I guess, whatever we call those. What do we call those?
A decoy, right?
Decoy. Out in the garage, duck press.
You in 1968, you were given an award or some kind of a medallion from a bronze medallion from Allied Arts.
It's hanging there in the kitchen. What'll I do with it?
We'll have to film that because that's from Allied Arts that
Really?
was commemorating your 8 years of service. I think you and Shirley.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. It's hanging on the Biedermeier. It's right over there by my desk. It's just hanging on its ribbon, and I forget what it was for.
That's what and it was designed by Howard Duell. Who?
Duell?
Yes.
I think he was a professor at the university or
He
something.
might have been. Yeah, he was a craftsperson who
Yeah.
who designed it and actually made it.
Huh?
So that's cool. We'll have to take a look at it.
You kids must be just desperately bored.
This is
Oh no, we're taking notes.
this is great.
We're not.
This is why we're here. We want to find out all this stuff. We're into history.
Oh, okay.
This is all great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Actually, while we're on the subject of the '60s again, I'm just going to throw a few things out at you and see if you can maybe tell me a little bit about, if you remember. Do you remember the speaking of food, the James Beard Gourmet series that Allied Arts sponsored?
Well, not really. Let's see, what year was that? Do you
I
know?
think it was around 1966. It was at the Olympic Hotel.
No, I don't. Surely 66. I never met him. I didn't ever. This is the use of a cane. Those have been really bothering me.
Oh, those are little leaves. It looks like leaves.
It's just some flower petals.
Okay.
So now I feel a lot better. No, I didn't have anything to. I may have printed for it, but I don't recall that.
Okay. There was also a in the '60s. There was an Allied Arts TV series that there are.
Oh my gosh,
Do you recall?
that was funny. Let's see. I think someplace I do have still the plastic Eames chairs that we bought. I have them up at the little middle house at Whidbey. the plastic chairs that we used, that they sat on during the TV series.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I remember printing it about it in the Allied Arts newsletter, but I don't believe I have any copies of that. So, but that was an amusing adventure.
What was the series supposed to be doing actually?
Did it have a title?
I think there were a few of them and they had different titles, but they all seemed to have some relation to the city and the art scene. And,
I can't remember exactly what we did. I would have to look at an old newsletter, and that would be very useful. I don't seem to have those.
But that must have been an interesting adventure for Allied Arts to...
Well, yeah, to go out. We did go out there, and we did get round some people up. I wonder if we got Joanne Eckstein to speak, possibly.
You might have, yeah.
She was a good member of Allied Arts. She was imperious, very grand, and her parents were her father was an early merchant in the city, and so she never married, and she was a remarkable lady, in a pack of trouble, but really good. And the fact that she really stayed on with Allied Arts, she hung in there, hanged in there. Do you want hanged in there or hung in there? And we had many a meeting at her house on Capitol Hill. I think of her when I drive up there now. She, I can't remember the name of the store that her father had. I didn't ever know it anyway. My grandfather had a store too, which he lost in 1916. He came here, he was from England, and when my mother was in her teens, there was a bad spell, and he lost the store on 2nd and Cherry, I think. My father's family came from Kentucky, and my uncle LB, that's sort of a southern thing, I think, where they call them by their initials. Uncle LB was the first head of City Light and City LB Youngs, but City Light and City Water. And there's Lake Youngs, and his face is up on the tower at Volunteer Park. They were early doers in the city. And my mother was too. She was head of Children's Hospital for several years when only women were on the board. It was always all women. That was remarkable.
And I know you were involved in Children's Hospital for many, many years.
Well, yes, I did belong to a group and so on. That was my, mother was the one who really did do that. We lived in Laurelhurst then, and when I went to college, I thought I'd be a journalist. And I was editor of the Roosevelt High School News. And I thought and I did take some journalism at the university, and I took art from those lovely old geezers that studied in Paris. That was nice.
Now you have a special interest in France as well, don't you? I mean,
by mistake, we inherited one summer a French exchange student, Pierre, and he was the first of about 7 that came every summer. He'd say, well, my friend Michelle is coming the next year, and my friend Jean Max is coming. And so I sort of picked back up on French, and then it came a chance to go on a cheap flight in the winter to France. I forget who put it on in Seattle, and a friend of mine, Peggy, another Peggy. I said, Peggy, do you want to go to France in February? And she said, sure. And so we went. But by that time, I had people there that I knew, and they were always so great unnecessarily grateful to me for having their children. So there were people in Marseille and people in Paris and people in Dijon, and so I became a Francophile in a big way. And my French is very imperfect, but I love trying it, and I, no matter with whom so I went the next 6 winters on the cheap ski flight, and you'd get to Milan, and then you'd take the train and go someplace mysterious with whomever I was traveling with, and the others would go skiing, the dummies, and I'd go have adventures trying to get along, get a hotel, buy dinner. I'd had French in high school and college, but it always was enough. There never was a big problem. It was fine. I never, and of course, some of the French exchange students were back there by then. I could touch base, and I met some of their parents, and some of their parents came to my house in Bellevue when they came to visit as well. The best time was the time that one parent couple was at my house. Was. We always think about that. Anyway, I was fixing dinner, and the phone rang, and it was the Bellevue police. And Miss Jane, my daughter Jane, that was my daughter Anne, but my daughter Jane, they said, well, we have your daughter in jail here. And she was caught smoking down in the public park, and she was in high school. And I had to go spring her and from jail. That was really a wonderful display for the French parents, I thought. It was okay. Jane.
That's funny. Did she recover from that episode?
Jane? Oh, did she ever? She's terrific. Jane's terrific.
That's a scary thing to have happen.
Oh, it wasn't scary at all. It was amusing. Everything, really, lots of things are very amusing in my life. So.
When was your first trip to France? Do you recall that? About what time?
No,
year?
well, if I throw out a number, do you think it would be right like 68?
Sure, yeah.
Then I went every winter on that ski flight for about, I think I went 6 or 7 times. By then in the summers I would have an exchange student. They all went to school at Pullman. There was a program at at Pullman anyway, Western
State.
Washington State, and they would have somebody the next year from France, and so that's how one becomes a Francophile. And I always liked French in school, and anyway, and so it was a challenge. Anyway.
Well, I'd like to get back a little bit to some of the Allied Arts years again, if possible. And you were also very influential with a lot of the theater groups and a lot of the arts groups in the city. When you were a member of Allied Arts, you were a strong supporter and a strong advocate. I know that's the Seattle Repertory Theater was.
Well, it started, but I can't believe I was ever an influence. Allied Arts, the newsletter was the thing that I cranked out, and Alice really, but we made it happen. And then so many members of those organizations were members of Allied Arts in those days that you always had a connection. And we, of course, we subscribed to the repertory when it started, and I didn't ever really go much to the opera. but we went to the rep, and having to come in from Bellevue and so on and so forth, and then there were kids at home, so on and so forth. But there were a lot of Allied Arts meetings at my house in Bellevue. People came over, and that was lovely. There always were. It was very easy to have a big party there. A lot of big parties.
And Allied Arts was made up of representatives from all these different groups.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they changed, and a lot of them stayed on and on and on, like I did, as I did.
So you were quite connected to the different groups, to Allied Arts and you, and the groups were really connected to Allied Arts, so there was a kind of a mutual support, I guess, there.
Yeah. Well, and editing Puget Soundings was something that I loved. I guess I'd studied journalism in high school, but I loved doing the magazine, and that's sort of where I fell in love with printing. And then Shirley and I bought that press, and I printed for Allied Arts ever since I had it.
How did you wind up becoming the? How did you take on the role of the head of the Washington State Arts Commission? That was.
I was appointed. I forget why. Was it Dan Evans, the governor then? I can't remember. Because it wasn't. I was always a Democrat.
That was, I think, 1976.
76.
Yeah, when you were the chair of the commission.
I wasn't the world's best chair, but I told you that. But I could make them laugh.
What was the experience like in general?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. I loved everyone. I especially loved. We had such wonderful staff. We called them staff, but there were a couple of women, and the Arts Commission met all over the state, you know. So I was always driving. Jacob Lawrence, and he was on that. We were good friends. He was on the Arts Commission, and he didn't drive, and we were always driving to Walla Walla or Wenatchee or some Yakima or Vancouver, someplace for an Allied Arts or what was it? Let's see, State Arts Commission meeting. And I'm not cut out to be the chairman of anything, but as I said already, but I loved doing it, and I wasn't great at speeches, although I've been talking a long time now.
Well, everybody that we talk to points to you as being one of their favorite people to have worked with, and one of their favorite people at Allied Arts through all these years. So
well, I'm lucky that I'm lucky in my friends. I have so many good friends. I'm very lucky. And then I was so lucky really to have the French and have the French kids and have that connection, because in my youth I never imagined I would get to go to France and travel and do that stuff. And of course I used to ski before I ever had polio, and so I didn't have that winter occupation, but I could go to France. So Bob Bloch was this old, was a mere acquaintance of mine. I don't know from what especially. Maybe he was an early Allied Arts member too. But that was a plague year for polio, 1952, I think. And he got it, and I got it. And we were both in an 8-bed ward at Harborview. It was just a world I never knew about. I'd gone there working for the Junior League as, reading to children and so on and so forth. But it was remarkable to be in be a ward of the county, in a county hospital, and your own doctor had to come as a guest and I ended up with my roommate being Robert Bloch, which was a very amusing thing to happen. He wasn't the world's best patient, but I could make him laugh, and we shared a remarkable nurse, and it was a very we moved almost at the same time. We moved to Swedish hospital when we could get out of the iron lungs, and I forget if we were roommates there or not, but it was a bond with Robert Bloch. Did you ever know him?
No.
Oh,
no,
pity.
But he's spoken of a lot.
Yes.
By many people.
Pack of trouble. But a lovely guy.
And he was the president in 1960 when you.
Yes. Yes, I think he was
college.
appointed at the same time, and that's when I first knew him. Well, no, I knew him before that because I knew him at Harborview and in Swedish. I can remember he's going down in the pool, going under in the pool, saying, "Help, help." Do you remember how he talked? Do you remember him at all? Did you ever know him?
Really, no, unfortunately. No.
Oh, pity.
He had a very deep voice.
Yes, and he was saying, "Help," and I was in the pool with my nurse, and he was going under, and he was saying, "Help, help," and I was laughing so hard. But they saved his life. They got him.
Now you were working pretty closely with Fred Bassetti also, and there was something that came up. Maybe you recall this in 1973. That was called the Anti-Ugly Squad. That Fred.
Anti-what?
Anti-Ugly Squad. That was supposed to be looking at some of the really big eyesores,
Disasters in the city.
of the city, yeah, and commenting.
I don't remember that.
You were referred to. Everybody had Ugly as their last name in the news in the flyer.
Truly.
You were Peggy Ugly, and Alice was Alice Ugly, and Fred
Oh.
was Fred Ugly. And
I don't recall that newsletter. Oh dear.
I don't think that the group lasted too long, but it was
No.
It was funny. It's a funny.
Yes. Well, that was the good part about Allied Arts, really. It was a funny combination of people, really, and people like Joanna Eckstein, and then all those architects and lawyers, and then an odd person like me, and so on and so forth.
Well, when you wrote in that Allied Art in that article
Oh.
in Puget Soundings also was that artful artlessness is Allied Arts style, which was very very well said. And you said that meetings are informal, comments are audacious, and humor covers very serious purpose. It's a coalition of determined individualists that meets monthly, and certified non-joiners find themselves joining to work toward elusive goals which are often as not reached. So, and then you said you would hope to be a member for the rest of your life in good standing.
Still happens. They still meet here at the foundation. You know that. Bless their hearts.
And so you still see Jerry and Alice?
Yes, sure. They come. They don't meet in the summer, but they'll start coming. I hope they start coming again. Well, it's free wine and cheese and crackers. So.
That's always been a big part of it, hasn't it? The wine and cheese.
I think so. Yes. I mean, no, it's a wonder I'm not still in jail for having my children serve champagne. And when we saved the market, I mean, it sounds like we saved the market, but it wouldn't have happened It wouldn't have happened. And Joe, that guy, what is his last name? The one who worked at Frederick's, was an early member. He was a retail store person. I forget his last name right this minute. Scherson. Yeah. Joseph Scherson. I think he worked for Frederick and Elson. And you know, but he didn't kick up ugly about our not wanting a department store where the market is. And eventually, well, Lou Pritchard still has the apartment. I haven't been down there for a long time, but we used to have some Allied Arts meetings there. Lou should do that if he were a good person. We always say that.
Alf Collins told us that he was working up until very recently as a member of the board, the preservation board.
Oh yes, the Market Foundation.
Right, right. And so, you know, all these Allied Arts people are still really active with making sure that things.
It was at I think it might have been a Save the Market party or a something the Market party that I introduced Alf to Shirley. He had just come to town, and Shirley was by then my neighbor and friend, and we had gone down to Save the Market or do something, drink wine, and Alf had just come to town and worked for the Seattle Times, and so that was where we got Alf.
You're kidding.
It was very nice.
That's really something. So,
yeah.
So he and Shirley met at one of those.
Yes, I can remember we were sitting on bales of straw or something, and across from the Market apartment where Lou still goes.
Do you remember when Shirley was starting to get the idea to
the store?
To open up the store?
Yeah, she was my close neighbor and really, really, really close friend when she thought of it. And I forget if it was before or after. It was probably before Julia Child came to town. But she was really smart, and maybe she became divorced. I mean, who didn't? And she, no, there wasn't a kitchen store in Seattle at all. And she thought of it herself, and we all egged her on, and it happened. And it was tiny at first. It didn't go clear through to Stewart. Or is it on Stewart now? No, well, whatever that second street is. But that table that she had when she started the store, it belonged in the old rental house on our property in Bellevue. You don't have to know all this stuff. But she asked my mother if she could use it for her display table when she opened the store. And it's a wonderful table that was made for the old summer house. The boards are this wide, and they're 4 big boards, and Shirley still has it because that old summer house burned down with some later occupants. But Shirley had the table down at her store. Now she has it at Whidbey. And so I get to see that table very often.
That's really special.
Yes.
Really nice.
It's about 12 feet long and this wide, and it's made of wide planks. It was built with the house.
It must be very solid.
Yeah, it's a dandy table. It's well loved.
So was that whole idea?
I'm sorry, my battery's dying. I need to plug in.
Sure.
So just give me a moment.
Turks, I think.
Really?
I miss having an animal.
Okay, we're going.
Well, I can hear one outside.
Yes, yes. I have visiting animals quite a lot. Dogs that are neighbors that come. The dog is a neighbor, and comes by. I don't know where he belongs, but he comes by for a handout.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Shirley and her store. And I was wondering, with your interest in France and your interest in Julia Child as well, did she come up with the name Sur la Table?
I think I believe I might have been in on that.
Oh yeah.
But she doesn't have, I don't know if she speaks any French. And I had 2 years in high school and 1 in college. And then I had those French kids, but fat lot of good that did me. But I had enough to get along and make it through France with completely non-French speaking companions. And I went 6 or 7 or 8 times, I can't remember, I guess, in the winter. And never had problems. It was trains and buses and hotels and food and everything. It was just thrilling for me because after I got out of high school and college and so on and so forth, I thought, well, I'll never go. But then I did get to, and that was wonderful. Anyway.
So you think you had an influence on Shirley as well?
Oh, well, yeah. She was only 20 or something, and I was, well, I don't know what year that was. Do the math. She's 14 years younger than me.
Oh, I see.
Hmm? I hope you approve of than used as a pronoun. No, let's see, me is the pronoun.
That's
But
fine.
than is, yeah, I mean, it's the Englishy. My mother's family were English. I always use the objective after than instead of saying than I. I hope that's okay.
That's fine. We want to be as proper as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Well. Anyway.
Or improper.
Or you don't shame me for it or anything. Okay.
No, I promise you no.
Okay.
So, now we can maybe move into
Where are we?
some of your own personal maybe accomplishments and things. And I'm just wondering if you, as you're looking back at Allied Arts years, and if you have any favorite projects that you might have worked on while you were part of Allied Arts, or in all these years that you've been with Allied Arts, are there some projects that you really enjoyed, especially that stand out?
Well, Saving the Market was really big. That was marvelous. And I would have to really, I hadn't thought about that for a long time. I loved doing the newsletter. I don't know if they still do one. I don't believe they do. That's too bad. That was super because then I worked with Alice and whoever was president. And Alice is such a good friend. And my luck is that I don't have to do any work, but they will meet here once a month, the foundation. And I love that because I do get to see Alice and Jerry and whoever else chooses to come once a month. And we have a little wine and anyway, I've told you that. Old people repeat themselves.
That's
I
okay.
noticed.
Are there other projects that you can remember that you
With Allied Arts?
that you liked especially to work on?
Well, there was a newsletter. I don't know everything. Well, let's see, what was, maybe Pioneer Square. That was a big deal. And then putting the trees in, what is that street? 2nd Avenue between, there's one that I bought specially for my son Ned, who died, and it's huge now. They're the ones on the street that's closed to cars there. And anyway, that everything always had the ear of the president, and laughed.
Do you recall the that whole era with the World's Fair coming and that the excitement that might have surrounded that?
Well,
Allied Arts was involved in that too, I think.
I'm trying to think, did we help? There was an arts and crafts pavilion or there wasn't a pavilion, building. And who worked down there that we knew? I can remember taking my daughter Jane, who was 4 then, and going to the fair. But I can't remember what Allied Arts had to do with it, especially. Let's see, I think maybe the rep opened that year too, and
Around that time.
yes, all those things happened.
There was
But-
a Theodore Rethke poetry reading as well. I think that
Yes,
Allied Arts
mhm.
sponsored.
Sure.
But I think even just getting the fair going was a big accomplishment
Mhm.
for Allied Arts. You certainly supported it.
Yes, yes. I can't really remember being involved in, but I know if only through the newsletter, that would have been. It would, Lordy.
And some of your favorite people to work with. You've talked about some others that you can recall that you really enjoyed working
In Allied Arts?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Well, John Ashby Conway was still around when I started. And then it was lovely to know Joanna Eckstein, because I told you her family were merchants, and my grandfather had a store as well. And she was a remarkable lady. And then, of course, every president as they came along, I got to be either vice president or scullery maid or whatever for years and years and years. How many years was that? I can't do the math, but how long I've belonged.
Decades.
Yes, decades. So there were always monthly meetings, except in the summer, and there still are of the old foundation. Well, I told you that. I've told you everything, I think.
Is there anything?
I haven't talked as much in forever.
One thing that we would love to do is to film the garage and
The
maybe some
shop?
of the shop, yeah, and maybe some of the artworks in your home, just so that we can show some of the wonderful things that you've got.
Yeah, it's the
That's a-
Tom Wilson Shrine. I told you that. Upstairs, there's a wonderful portrait. You could walk up there that Tom did of me and my 4 children,
That would be nice. Yeah, that would be nice.
and up in one of the bedrooms, in the smaller bedroom. And then there's a Ned Benke, a nice painting over the fireplace upstairs. And then most of these other big ones are Tom Wilson's, because who's going to store all those? I haven't paid for very many of them. Let's see, that one was the first Betty Bowen winner. I was one of the beginning members of the Betty Bowen Committee at the Art Museum, and she was a great friend, and she was an Allied Arts person. And that was the winner the first year of the Betty Bowen Committee. And now I think he got $1,000 prize.
Also,
and-
Tom Wilson.
Pardon?
Is that also?
Oh no, Tom never won it.
Oh.
No, that one's, it's possible it's written on the back of it. I can't remember his name right now. If you call me up later, I'll remember it.
Okay, but that was. the
He
one.
was the first Betty Bowen winner, and we all were supporting him, and so we sort of, everyone bought something. He had a studio up at Issaquah, and we but Betty Bowen was a great friend and a good Allied Arts person, and so, and very amusing. So it was a good friend. We needed her. We need her still.
Well, we can kind of bring things to a close, and we'll
We could all have a little lie down
and we'll take a look at your
at the shop.
shop. Yeah.
Yeah, the print.
Hey, don't come in yet.
Okay. There's a lot of artwork. Oh my god. So this is the.
Yeah, she's filming you.
Oh, okay.
Give me another minute and you guys can come in.
No, much more in the abstract, and I can see it was very famous, you know, red square on a lighter shade of red square.
Tom went to, grew up in Illinois, and then he went to a graduate school in Yale and then one in Oregon.
Mm.
And then he moved here to Port Townsend. We met him through friends, and he stayed a good friend. He was here yesterday or the day before, I forget. Anyway, I see him and talk to him all the time. He lives over on Belmont. He's doing portraits mostly now. So,
Oh, we're on Capitol Hill?
I mean, right?
On Capitol Hill?
Yeah,
Oh,
right on Belmont, right down from the freeway.
oh, sure,
Right
sure.
at the end, before you turn and go under the freeway.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
okay.
And he, that's a beautiful painting of his
Yeah.
there. I own some, and I guess some are on loan, but I don't know. He doesn't know, he doesn't care.
A long-term loan.
Yes, I think so.
Oh,
He's a good friend.
Curating the house for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice thing. It's a good place for that to be.
Yes,
That was a Betty Bowen winner, I forget his name, that was the first Betty Bowen winner. I have to hold on when I walk around this place, but it's a lovely machine. I didn't print that anyway. Well, I don't remember. Well, Jane, my daughter Jane, wants this press, so I love that. Shirley and I didn't know how to run it when we got it, but we taught ourselves. Anne Gould Hauberg invites you here to honor Jack Leonard Larson. 2001. February 25th, 2001. Now look in those drawers because those are the cuts. Turn that light on if you want to right there,
Oh.
Jeff.
Oh,
Right in front of you.
okay.
That light, yeah. Try it again, did it? Oh, maybe my light's out. Well,
Maybe it's not quite there or something.
it's okay. Can't help that. Sometimes I have a light glove here, but I don't seem to know.
There's the actual block.
You boys didn't ever hear of Lorenzo Milan.
Doesn't
He used to run KRAB when it started.
No.
station KR, radio station KRAB. He was a rascal. He was a good friend of mine, and he decided to write his memoirs, and so he was my favorite composer.
I see.
These are amazing. Just the black
Look at
drawers.
those. Oh, it's just so super. Aren't those drawers nice?
Extraordinary.
You have to be, I'm a little behind in putting away type. Let's see if I could type it. Must have been.
Oh,
There's a, right up on the counter there in front of you is a Let's Keep the Market.
Oh, I got
I printed all those paper bags.
Saw the block there.
Yeah,
What did you use the paper bags for?
they put it, all the merchants put them on sticks in their,
Oh,
in their,
That's smart. Yeah.
zillions.
Is this a wood carve? Like a wood block?
It's in the linoleum block. Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
cut it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. See, and Victor Stavrik was a pal, and what did we do? That was a poster somebody else did. I'm trying to think. I'm sorry, that light's,
Oh yeah,
I
there's
have 2 lights out.
another Let's Keep the Market poster.
Oh, yeah, and that's Victor's drawing.
From the sketch.
Yeah.
And you did that like film festival, right?
Yeah,
Oh, great.
I just designed it for him. I had to take it down to a printer. I didn't print it, I had to take it down to a
Oh,
printer.
cool.
But you
All the big
designed
stuff,
it.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what I used to do more.
That was actually like the first film festival.
I think so.
Yeah. In Seattle, I think that
I
was
found that old
1968 or
picture from
69.
something. Also, that's a handy thing to have a third prize sign right underneath.
Yes.
But those drawers are full of marvelous cuts that are for use. Boy, I see I have 2 lights out.
Tons of stuff. Tons of stuff.
Drawer after drawer. Type of cuts. And we don't know what's, oh yeah.
And these are all the things that you printed up. These are
Well, some.
examples. Some of the
In
examples.
that box there, yeah. Boxes and boxes and boxes, more boxes. So many things for friends. Weddings, zillions of weddings. This is a nice place. And it's about the size of the room off the garage I had in Bellevue. And then the one we had before that up at Shirley's. And that wonderful drawers, the drawers behind you. And the drawers here, the type drawers, but those drawers, pull one open and see. I mean,
This is
I have quite a bit
beautiful
of paper there.
Yeah, beautiful paper.
Well, some is, some isn't, but that's okay.
There's Alice.
Oh, well,
Typing.
leave that out, leave it out on the here, and we have another Allied Arts meeting now.
Oh, that's great.
Put that down.
That's her behind your typewriter, huh?
Yeah, I must have done that for something at some time, I guess. That was with sticky letters before I had the press. But I had that wonderful cutter that cost Shirley and me $50.
This guy over here.
Yes, that guillotine cutter, it's just,
Yeah,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
oh, it's just terrific. It's dangerous.
it looks dangerous.
And the press, do you want me to turn the press on for a minute, or have you seen one? You've seen one.
Well,
A little footage would.
yeah, if you want to
If it's.
turn it on.
Well, it's just easy to
Yeah,
turn on. And it's the right spot. This is nice, but the thing is, gotta get over the start. And I had to get a new belt for it one time, so I took it, went up to the shoemaker up on Madison, and he gave me a new leather belt. It's a lovely machine. It is a brave little Chandler Price, made in Cleveland, Ohio. 1880 something. It's such a dandy. You have to, one of the problems in my old age is that you have to carry those heavy, all iron
Oh, the type
things
boxes.
across to put into the press. And you have to lift, at the same time you have to be really ambidextrous and lift up this huge, this thing that's very, this is the clamp.
Mhm.
Lift it up so you can clamp the chase, which is the name for that iron frame. And you have to clamp it in so that the type doesn't fall on the floor when you turn it on.
Yeah.
You have to really, and the wood stuff all goes over in that adorable little cupboard. And it's called, the wood stuff is called the furniture. That's the printer's name for it. And so you have to lock it in, and then you use the coin key and the coin. Can you see those little coins right there that are holding the, right there by the chase, by the type?
Mhm.
That little thing, well, not there,
This little guy?
over by, no, by Jeff.
Oh.
These,
No, right down by the type. Those little things that you wind up, yeah.
Oh, it's
That, yeah,
Oh,
that's
oh,
the
okay.
coin. Quoin,
Oh.
good crossword name.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or jigsaw or whatever crossword.
Oh, that's right. 'Cause you had to build a whole block to center your type square.
Yeah,
When I started college was the last year they were teaching like hand laid
oh yes,
type, and then everything went digital in the middle of school.
I know, I know. Well, it was lovely to have this thing. So, I printed free for Poncho all those years I was on the board of Poncho and for Allied Arts. It was lovely to have this. It was useful. On behalf of the Market Foundation, Michael Maloney and Luther McLean invite you to a midwinter party. Printed that. Lots of weddings. Well,
It's fabulous.
Jane says she wants it, my daughter Jane, my other daughter. So we'll see. Oh, this has come down here by mistake. This is the layout of those drawers over there.
Oh,
The California job case.
little code key.
Ooh, look, there's one
Oh,
nice
that's a
spider.
big spider.
Oh.
I'm actually fond of spiders.
Yeah, I don't mind them.
Yeah. I think they're fine.
Yep. So good luck.
Anyway, this is a nice place.